spiritually. So it's a reflection of the idea of what you're creating. You're creating the simulation, but your technology will reflect that idea.
Okay, thank you for that.
We thank you. Aveo. Good day.
Aveo.
Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
We have lots of great questions from our viewers.
All right, but before we get to those questions, we would like to address the following idea. Many of the questions had to do with the idea of demons being independent entities and were asked in that way. As we have just explained in the monologue, the idea of demons are simply a manifestational projection from the negative side of collective consciousness of humanity. So we would like to repeat the idea that they do not have their own independent existence apart from that collective consciousness, where, in a sense, when fear-based and negative beliefs take precedence in a person's consciousness, they can be crafted, so to speak, out of the energy of the collective consciousness on the negative side, formed, so to speak, from the clay of that negative collective consciousness, and are projections of any individual tapping into that negative collective consciousness to form the experience or reflection of a demon, and they are not independent entities in their own right. Therefore, that monologue has addressed all the questions that may have been asked in a way that implies that demons are independent entities, which they are not. So those questions are eliminated. They are already answered.
Okay, I'll do my best to avoid those. The first one has to do with the representation of the Lucifer archetype and the idea that there's an asteroid Lucifer in astrology that could symbolize how we might be influenced by darker energies or even be tied to unbreakable soul contracts. And what this person is asking for is a more empowering or positive view on how to understand and work with this archetype.
As you know, in your language, the name Lucifer actually means light bringer. So the idea, again, is that it reflects the concept of taking light in its highest form and reducing it energetically, vibrationally down to a physical level, lowering the frequency. This is what is meant by the concept of a fallen angel, that its vibrational frequency is reduced to such a degree that it expresses itself in physical terms at a lower density, a lower vibration. Now, this doesn't happen specifically to an actual angel, but the idea is representative and reflective of the idea of your higher natures, as you often say, the angels of your better natures, your true essential beingness, which is light and love, in a sense being lowered in frequency to be experienced and densified into physical materiality. So the idea of Lucifer is simply the idea of archetypally dealing with the polarity that exists in the way that it is expressed in physical reality between positive and negative, light and dark, so on and so forth. So it is that reflection which can bring up fears within an individual or within a collective and must be dealt with and transformed by turning it back into the light or balancing the darkness with the light within each and every individual.
Okay, thank you. And could you explain the concept of as above, so below when it comes to negative energy? When we experience wars, injustice, and dehumanization, what is happening above that it translates to these atrocities below?
The challenges on your life path are created in a spiritual blueprint that then play out in physical reality below, so to speak, in the denser reality of a lower frequency, but according to the belief system in the personality as to whether that is dominated by positive and or negative beliefs. So it's not necessarily that the blueprint itself contains the struggle or the strife that you experience in war and other kinds of experiences like that, but the challenges that are outlined in the life path blueprint are then colored by the belief systems in the physical personality to be experienced in ways that allow you to overcome those challenges relative to the physical personality point of view.
Okay, and can you speak about the demons or Satan that Jesus faced and those that archetype Archangel Michael faces?
Again, the idea is to understand that Yeshua or Jesus, just like you, understood the idea that demons are a projection of the collective negative consciousness of humanity, and it is simply a way of referencing that he, like you, had to deal with and transform and balance those energies within himself as a human so that he would balance them, face them, deal with them in a way that would allow him to transcend the idea of experiencing negativity for himself, but still outwardly would express that idea in such events as the crucifixion and the torturing and suffering to represent the idea of how humanity sees itself, how it represents itself, how it experiences itself in a negative way that can be transcended in a positive way by then the events of the upliftment, of the resurrection, and the ascension. The idea of archangels experiencing interactions with negativity is simply another way of saying that when angels deal with humanity, they recognize that that polarity exists, but they are, in a sense, above that and do not experience it directly for themselves.
And what exactly is black magic? Does it work? How? And why do some people practice it?
Again, this has to do with misconceptions of empowerment. It is the idea of utilizing synchronicity in a negative way. So the idea is simply another expression of polarity, recognizing one's self-empowerment for the creation and manifestation of certain events or effects in physical reality, but doing it from kind of a negative point of view, that one must proceed in the darkness in order to affect the reality or the life in the way that one intends or one prefers, rather than coming from the side of light.
Okay, and could you shed some light on the idea that people are possessed by demons, such as a nun crawling up the walls and the ceiling inside of a room, which was witnessed by a priest, or other such occurrences witnessed? How does an exorcist remove the demons from such people?
Again, this is happening internally. Remember that this is your own energy, and you are capable of manifesting many different kinds of effects, like levitation, crawling up walls, things like that, when the belief system is strong enough to allow those effects to occur and overcome what might be a typical understanding of physical reality, to demonstrate those abilities, to demonstrate those powers, but again, being done from the fear or negative-based side. A possession is, again, a recognition that it is your own energy. That's why it's in your body. but it is the idea that it is coming from outside because you are in denial of the fact that you are creating the demonic force out of the collective negative consciousness. So the idea of possession is a sort of polarized way of understanding that it is your own energy, but through the denial that it's happening from you, so you project it on the outside, that you are being possessed by a demonic entity from the outside. But that is simply a convenient way of not facing the fact that you are actually creating this energy within yourself by going so deeply into the idea of negative and fear-based beliefs that it takes over your physical form to the extent that you can actually exhibit some of the features that you are talking about.
Can you talk about the idea of protection from negative energies and using things like crystals, flower essences, and other things to protect and create a positive energy field? How do things like that work? And does focusing on the idea of protection in any way create more of an idea of a threat and something to be protected against? Or can these things be explored in a positive and supportive way without calling all that in?
Yes, they can. Now, it's all well and good if you wish, and if it makes you feel better, to say that you are surrounding yourself with white light or using a crystal to clear the energies or sage to clear the energies of the room, so that you are using a permission slip to establish that you have a preference for a particular positive vibration, so that the idea is that you will not allow your energy to match the frequencies of something that you might deem to be a more negative idea or a negative belief system. So in that sense, yes, you can do that. But the overindulgence or the over worry of the idea of needing protection or requiring protection can in fact actually invite the idea of your energy matching more negative frequencies, because you are believing so deeply that you need the protection. You are actually creating the idea of the experience of being attacked because you are believing so strongly that you might be attacked, thus believing very strongly that you need the protection, instead of doing it more lightly, just as a statement of the vibrational frequency that you prefer in your intentions toward all things and experiences in your life. So it's a matter of balancing that idea and using the permission slips in a lighter and more positive way, rather than steeping yourself in the fear that if you don't protect yourself, something might get you, which again is only going to be your own energy matching negative vibrational frequencies that would allow you to experience the effect as if you are being attacked by something outside yourself, when it's all going on internally. So again, it's a matter of balance.
So along those ideas, let's say
One
someone moves
moment,
in and
one moment. To answer the previous question fully, the idea of an exorcist is really simply someone who allows them to get in touch, allows the person that appears to be possessed to get in touch with the fact that it is coming from their own belief system and that they themselves are manifesting that particular experience from their own energy. So in a sense, an exorcist is sort of like a type of psychologist that can aid and assist a person to get out of denial that they themselves are creating that effect, and that demons don't really exist as outside entities, but that that person is that powerful that they can create that effect within themselves. But they have to own it, they have to take responsibility for it, and then they will find that they are no longer, quote unquote, possessed. So that's what an exorcist actually does, is use the person's belief system in the negativity to overcome it by their belief in the positive energy that is capable of overcoming it. But it's all, in a sense, deep psychology that puts a person in touch and out of denial of their own fear-based and negative belief systems.
Okay, that's great. And as far as the protection idea, for example, if someone is living in a neighborhood and suddenly they become aware that there's been a number of robberies, and then that person decides for their own protection to put an alarm system in or take some steps in order to increase their security. Is that fear-based, or what makes that okay?
It is moderately fear-based, but at the same time, it can be done in a balanced way that simply recognizes the environment and the nature of the environment that you may be living in. So it's all right to be quote unquote practical and take certain precautions as long as it doesn't become an obsession, which could actually drive the negative experience toward you. So again, it's a matter of practical balance. It's a matter of understanding what environment you may have chosen to live in so that you can take moderate precautions to simply make you aware and alert of what is going on around you with other people so that you don't necessarily have to pay that much attention to all the little details. It can do something for you to help you relax, to understand that then you can focus on other things by having taken a modicum of awareness, a modicum of protection in that context. But as long as it doesn't become a full obsession, then there is nothing to worry about.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This question is, because we are afraid of our own light, our own infinite power, is this why our ego creates the idea of demons?
Yes. Exactly what we explained in the monologue.
And this individual is saying that sometimes they see demons around people that seem to contribute to physical symptoms like high blood pressure or back pain. Can you explain why this might happen and share ways to help people address it and prevent it from recurring?
Again, as we have already explained, these are what appear to be externalized manifestations of an internal idea of fear-based or negative beliefs that crafts these demonic representations or archetypal forms out of the collective clay of the collective consciousness on the negative side of humanity. So someone may be capable of perceiving that another person is doing this, and they may empathically pick up on the idea of that this manifestation has a certain form to it, a certain energy to it that can be represented archetypally in the shape of what humanity has labeled as a demon. But again, you can be aware that this is simply a projection of that person going through that experience, experiencing their own negative energy in that way. But a person might be sensitive enough to pick up on that and actually see the manifestations as if they truly were external independent entities, which they are not.
And this individual says, as a mental health therapist, they treat clients labeled with schizophrenia, bipolar, paranoia, and borderline personality disorders. These clients represent or report having delusions and hallucinations of demons and voices.
Yes.
Could you explain what is occurring in those? Well, I think you've explained it, and how they might be assisted in understanding what's happening so they can gain insight and connection to their higher self and feel more in control of their lives?
Well, if they are willing to receive it, if they are willing to accept it, the explanation we have already given about how demonic reflections are created out of the collective clay of the consciousness that is negative of humanity, if that can be shared, that idea can be explained to an individual, they can begin to get in touch with taking responsibility and diving into their belief systems of how they feel about themselves, why they would continue to torture or punish themselves that way. Then perhaps they can be helped if they're willing to accept that understanding. So everything that we've already talked about can be of help to those individuals, but they simply have to be willing to understand, to listen, to absorb and accept that explanation and take responsibility for it, which is not meaning to blame themselves, but just to understand the mechanism of how these things work so they can get in touch with negative beliefs they may have picked up along the way in their life and understand that those negative beliefs may have been, shall we say, telepathically reinforced within them in growing up, and can understand now that they have the freedom and the self-empowerment to let those beliefs go, that they really have no reason to perpetuate those beliefs against themselves in that way and have those kinds of experiences. But again, on top of all that, remember that sometimes an individual will, on their life path, choose to exhibit certain conditions, certain experiences that might help others figure out how to deal with them, how to cure, how to solve, so on and so forth. So sometimes an individual will choose that particular experience to help others figure out how to deal with it so that humanity can improve and understand its relationship to those kinds of conditions more fully. So it depends upon the life path as to why that individual may be experiencing that thing and how they may be serving others in having chosen to do so as a soul.
Thank you. This person is asking, how can I approach troubling topics such as war crimes and the ritual abuse of children? Are these issues reflections of aspects of myself that I am rejecting? If I view them as a mirror to heal my own wounds, I may not perceive them in my reality, but I feel a sense of responsibility to those who are suffering. I want to avoid adding energy to those dark issues by fixating on them, yet I also don't want to deny their existence or feel as though I'm abandoning those in need. How can I navigate this situation in a way that is beneficial for everyone involved?
All right, this goes back to what we have said about the idea of reflections in your reality. It doesn't mean that what you see is a one-to-one reflection of something that is an issue within you that you need to deal with literally and directly. However, if you can perceive it in your reality, the idea is you can help where you can. You can take the actions to help mitigate the suffering of others in some way, shape, or form, if possible. So the idea is not that you fixate on it, but that you're aware of it. You recognize that as you perceive it, it may be that the reflection for you is it gives you an opportunity to help those individuals cease their suffering. So take actions in a positive direction, in a loving direction that might help mitigate their suffering, and you will be doing what it is perhaps that you need to do to figure out the reason why that is in your life. It doesn't mean that you necessarily are adding to their negativity if you are willing to help them find a way to exit from the suffering that they have been experiencing because of their belief systems or their experiences in life. So by all means, you can be of great assistance. You don't have to worry about adding to their suffering just because you are aware of their situation.
Okay, and can you explain spiritual warfare, hell, and the duality that is inside all of us?
Well, the duality that's inside everyone is simply a reflection of the polarity that is part of existence, the negative and the positive. I'm speaking mechanically, the idea of lower vibrations, higher frequencies, light and dark, so on and so forth. Positive, negative, mechanically speaking. Positive being that which connects and expands, negative being that which creates the experience of separation and diminishment. But these are just mechanical energies that exist on every level of existence. So the idea is the duality is just a natural state of existence, and you can learn to balance it in a way that you can then choose what you prefer to experience rather than succumbing to beliefs that might be negative or fear-based that would allow you to experience things you don't prefer. Spiritual warfare doesn't really exist. The idea, again, is that hell doesn't really exist, except as you make it. Except as you deem it to be true for yourself, you will experience suffering and negativity in a way that could be described as a living hell. So the place itself is not real. People who believe in hell, when they die, if they really believe strongly enough that they will experience the idea of the so-called burning fires of hell, or however they have chosen to represent that concept, may experience it for a brief split second, because what you think, what you believe in spirit is instantly experienced But the instant that they would experience it, it would be so awful that they would wish that they would not experience it, and then they would stop experiencing it in spirit, because things happen instantaneously in spirit because time is different there. Spiritual warfare is a contradiction in terms. If you are spiritual, there is no warfare. The idea of conflict in that sense has to do with succumbing to fear-based and negative vibrations that would cause one to suffer, to struggle, to experience conflict, so on and so forth, to experience opposition in that sense. Whereas a being that is truly more balanced in its spirituality will never experience those things and would experience more of a flow and an ease in communication and in concept. So the idea of spiritual warfare, in a sense, doesn't really exist.
And this individual is saying, people say negative thoughts can manifest. What shall we do about all of the thoughts which we've already thought? Can we undo them? How do we clear past negative thoughts and patterns from our minds and aura? Is there a meditation, prayer, or visualization technique that can help?
If you have a negative thought, again, it's all right to deal with it. It's all right to recognize it. It's all right to allow it. Don't obsess over it. That's what causes the manifestation, is focusing too much negativity and fear on having a negative thought, judging yourself harshly for having the negative thought. Being afraid to have the negative thoughts can actually cause manifestations of negativity. But if a negative thought comes up, it's like, acknowledge it, recognize it, say, okay, let me explore why I'm having this. Let me see if this is an indication that I'm holding on to some kind of fear-based or negative belief about myself that would perpetuate these negative thoughts. Let me work with that. Let me see if I can find the root cause of why these negative thoughts are coming up so that I can let them go. So not being afraid, ironically, of having negative thoughts is what will allow you to make sure that they actually don't manifest in physical reality. Working with them in a positive way, using them to discover your deep-seated negative or fear-based beliefs that may be in your unconscious mind is a way to use them in a positive context. So don't be afraid of having them, just work with them in a positive way, and they will not manifest beyond the idea of simply recognizing that you have them.
Okay. And this person is saying that they've noticed that the more enlightened they become, the more darkness in society is revealed.
Yes.
And they want to know if this is a collective purging or is this shadow work that the individual needs to do. And that the idea that this somehow this demonic energy shows up whenever things are going great in their life, and then they are not sure what to make of that.
All right. All right. This is what we have said before about the idea of the expansion of consciousness, broadening your bandwidth. Remember, duality exists on every level of existence. Therefore, the more you expand your consciousness, the more aware you become of more of existence, the more you're going to recognize not only more light, but also more darkness. Now, just the recognition of it doesn't do anything. Just keep it in balance. If you start worrying that you're seeing more darkness, then you're going in a negative direction with it. So you have to understand it's a natural result of the expansion of consciousness that you would become more aware of the darkness as well as more aware of the light. But if you remain in balance with that observation and just make it a neutral observation, then you can still choose what you prefer without worrying that the negative side is going to manifest that you don't prefer. So stay neutral with the observation that you're going to recognize more light and darkness as you expand your consciousness, and everything will remain in balance and you can choose what you prefer to experience.
Okay. And this person has been noticing a third eye tattoo on various people, and they feel like it's a form of synchronicity. They even saw someone walking at a traffic light, and then somebody on a train. And so what does this tattoo symbolize?
Well, as a synchronicity, it could be a message from your spirit guides urging you and encouraging you to actually work on your psychic and empathic and telepathic abilities. So you might be getting that synchronicity to remind you to use your intuition more. So go ahead, follow your intuition. Practice being more telepathic. Practice being in love with humanity. Practice being more empathic with other individuals. Open up the idea of your third eye. This might be a message from your spirit guides that you need to focus on that a little bit more.
And this person is saying, while I understand the only way I can feel an external energy is actually feeling my energy match that, how do I completely rid myself of the effects I feel when another is intentionally sending negative and painful energies? I seem stuck in a paradox.
Well, again, you have already recognized that it's your own energy matching their frequency, so you would have to ask yourself, what reasons are you creating within your consciousness for matching their frequency? Because you wouldn't have any effects whatsoever if you didn't match their frequency. So any residual effects means you're still matching that lower frequency. So you have to ask yourself why you would have a reason to do so, and find out what that belief system is telling you, what story it's telling you that makes it seem logical for you to keep matching that frequency and feeling those effects. Because you will not feel the effects if you stop matching that frequency. So find the reason you're creating, the reason you're generating that seems for some reason to be a logical reason to continue to match that lower frequency.
Okay, and this person is saying basically that if they express something and another person perceives it as divisive or dismissive, while others do not, how much responsibility do we actually bear for those perceptions? And it's along the idea of gaslighting, let's say, where you have another person that is insisting on what is happening, which is inaccurate.
That's an extreme example that isn't quite the point of the question. The idea is that in normal communication, it's always good to attempt to be as clear about your intention of what you're attempting to communicate as possible. So by all means, you're responsible for taking some time to make sure that your communications are not in any way, shape, or form reflective of some kind of unconscious hidden agenda that might color your words and might charge the words with some kind of an emotion that you may not be aware of that could trigger someone else. Now, their reaction to it is their issue and not yours, as long as you are making sure that your intention is as clear as possible, your communication is as clear, balanced as possible. Do your best to do your part to communicate clearly your intention. You can always apologize if you have made a mistake in how you wish to communicate something and say, that's not really what I meant. I'm sorry. Let me try to clear that up. And so you're always making sure that you're being clear in what it is you are communicating. At the same time, you are not responsible for any negative reactions in someone else who might have their own belief system filters that are choosing to misinterpret what you are saying. So it takes both sides to have really clear communication. You make sure your intentions are clear. They make sure that what they are receiving is clear. So they have the duty on their side and the responsibility on their side, instead of reacting with a knee-jerk triggered reaction to say, all right, I'm feeling that what you said is causing some triggering within me. Did you mean this or did you mean that? Let me also clarify the situation by making sure that what I'm experiencing is not coming from you, but is coming from me. And let me ask you to clear the air and specify in your communication what you actually intended to say. So that communication needs to happen from both directions. The concept that you're calling gaslighting is obviously an intentionally negative form of communication that of course will cause certain reactions in others because it's intentional. You have a hidden agenda for what it is you are communicating. So that's a little bit different than the idea of being unaware and unconscious about what you might be communicating and attempting to be clearer about it on both directions, in the receiving end and the sending end, as opposed to someone who is literally intending to cause miscommunication and misunderstanding in someone.
Okay. And this person is wondering how to let go and release negative dark habits. How do you replace the empty gap of an old habit when your mind is still being pulled in the negative direction? I understand filling the time with our greatest excitement, but how do we rid the negative habits forever and overcome these addictive habits?
All right. Again, remember, a habit is something you do you don't know you're doing. If you know you have a habit, it's not a habit, it's a choice. So you have no empty gaps. You will always fill it with some belief. You have to. If you had an empty gap, you would have an unconscious moment in the idea of your experience of physical reality. You wouldn't be creating physical reality. You always have to believe something to be true, positively or negatively or neutrally. So again, the idea is you have to own the concept that it is a choice you are making, maybe unconsciously, but this goes to, again, what we call the motivational mechanism in all humans. You will always choose what you believe is to your benefit. You will always move away from what you believe is not to your benefit, but the key word is belief. You may see that you're choosing something that is negative, that you don't prefer, but if you do keep choosing it, what you call a habit or an addiction, you have a reason for doing so that you've invented in your head. In other words, you may think that while you don't prefer it, you keep choosing it because you have a belief that it's safer to keep choosing that than moving in the alternative direction, which you may have a belief that says moving in the alternative direction may be worse. Something worse may happen than what you're experiencing now, so you will refuse to move in that direction. So you have to be very in touch with yourself in honest, transparent self-communication about why you would believe you need to keep choosing the thing you say you don't prefer, because in general, most people will keep doing that because it's a familiar and safer thing to do if they believe that choosing something different would actually cause something worse to happen than what they're experiencing now. That's how the motivational mechanism works. So you're making choices based on your idea that to make a different choice other than keep choosing that idea would be worse. So you have to find out why you think it would be worse and let that idea go, because it doesn't really make sense and it's not really a fact that a different choice would actually cause something worse to happen. You just have been told that story and you're buying into it.
Okay, and this person would like to know, when we find ourselves completely trapped in a situation that seems inescapable and is causing severe distress without understanding why or how it might be serving us, what is the best way to work through this?
What I just said. You still have to understand that you are never trapped. You have to watch your language, watch your definitions. To assume you are trapped is to feel that you are trapped. Understand that no matter how desperate a situation may seem, you are never trapped. You are always capable of transforming it if you get in touch with the belief that is causing the experience of entrapment, because it's only an experience. It's not actually real that you are trapped. You are always free to choose. You are always self-empowered, even if you're using that power to make it seem like you don't have any power to change anything. That's how you're using your power. So you have to see the paradox in the situation. You can never actually be trapped, but you can create an experience of entrapment. And that's what you're doing. So you have to get in touch with the belief systems that make it seem like having an experience of entrapment is a better alternative than what it is you could be doing as an alternative to that. You stay where you are, you freeze yourself, you lock yourself in because you have a fear-based belief that unlocking yourself and freeing yourself from the circumstance and situation would actually cause something worse to happen. It's what we just explained.
So how does that apply to a situation where a person is physically trapped?
Well, again, you have to look at the idea of what within you would be having attracted that particular experience. What is it that you believe to be true about yourself that you would have attracted yourself into that experience? It doesn't excuse any perpetrator that may have trapped you, but you have to take some responsibility for the idea that you put yourself in that situation. Now, again, that can be for negative or positive reasons, because the idea of being trapped from a positive perspective is, I have chosen to put myself in this situation in dealing with this other person or other people so that perhaps I may be in a position to help them overcome some of the fears within them in their belief system that causes them to act as a perpetrator in trapping other people, if that's what you're referring to. So you have to look at it from a position of power and not a position of victimhood.
Well, I was also referencing the idea of somebody being physically trapped because this is physical reality.
Well, trapped by what?
By in a building or
All right.
anything.
But again, it's the same idea. What belief systems are within you, or what life path challenge have you put before yourself so that you actually attract that situation to yourself? Remember, it's not about what happens. It's about what you do with what happens that makes the difference and reveals to you the reasons why that situation and circumstance has been co-created by you. So you have to remember it's about what you do, how you respond, how you react positively or negatively to the circumstance that determines how you will experience it and may reveal to you why you have created it and attracted it to yourself. Makes no difference if it's just a circumstance of physicality. You're trapped under a building or something like that. What are the reasons for why you may have attracted yourself to that? And can you stay in a positive state and deal with it from a positive point of view, no matter how dire it may seem to other people?
Okay. Now, this person is asking, can you talk about the idea of things like making amends, paying for past mistakes, and trying to go back and clean things up from the past? This person feels like they've had so many mistakes and they just don't know if they should be hung up on going back and apologizing and fixing everything, or should they just simply learn the lesson within themselves and then move on?
Yes, well, you can do both. I mean, in a sense, if you have the opportunity to do so, and it's part of allowing you to forgive yourself for going in a direction you didn't prefer, if it helps you get to that positive vibrational place and you have the ability to do so, certainly you may be able to go and explain to someone that it wasn't your intention to do something harmful to them. It can allow you to feel better. It can allow them to feel better. It can cause real connection and real communication. If that's not something that you're capable of doing because of circumstances, however, then yes, by all means, just learn the lesson from it. Know that you are now improving yourself. You're a better person by learning that lesson because you know you will not necessarily behave that way again. Then move forward. So you can do both depending upon whether you're capable of clearing the past or whether you're simply capable because of circumstances of learning the lesson and moving forward, or doing both where it can be done. It's up to you.
And this person's asking, does negative energy materialize as disease? And also, how do we release the pent-up stored emotions?
Negative energy quite often manifests itself as dis-ease. Listen to the word. So yes, so the idea again is there are many reasons for why you might be creating or experiencing the disease, all the way from having it planned out in your life path as a spirit because it's a challenge that will help your soul grow, having planned it out in your life path as a spirit because it will help other people figure out how to have a cure for that disease, and therefore you're actually being of service to humanity by having the condition that allows other people to figure out how to treat it and how to cure it. Or again, it's simply the product temporarily of a belief system, a fear-based negative belief system within you that you need to deal with so you can relieve yourself of that condition that is simply temporarily reflective of the uneasiness you have, the discomfort you have within yourself because of those belief systems, and how you deal with all of that and become a more positive person. So there are many reasons for the creation of a disease that you can deal with if you are honest in your self-investigation about what it is that is causing it and what it is that can be done in a positive way about learning lessons from it.
Okay, and here's a question that came up about what's the difference between human demons that you've spoken of versus interdimensional or dimensional demons that we cannot see?
There are no interdimensional demons. Anything that you would experience in your reality is coming from your reality. It doesn't mean there aren't negative beings out in the cosmos. It doesn't mean that there aren't trickster spirits that may be being used to challenge you to grow and expand in different ways. But the idea of what we are referring to and what you're referring to as demons is a projection of the negative side of the collective consciousness of humanity. And any demon you experience in that way is a manifestation of that nature coming from you, no matter where you think they may be coming from.
Okay. And I'm going to move on now to current event questions. The first one is about, is it even worth putting in the energy to converse with people who are clearly in the other world or on the other train track? It almost seems futile at this point. This person has tried so hard, and it seems as if even if you both speak English, there just is no understanding. Can we even try to work together to make our country a better place, or should we just focus internally and with like-minded people?
Well, again, you can do both. It's not about trying to convince anyone to change, but it's about finding things that might actually be common ground that you both can agree on and starting from there. So if you can find the things that you do agree on, then you can allow the things you don't agree about to simply go their way and allow that person to experience whatever track they're on and you to experience whatever track you're on. But it can be of some assistance to have a conversation where you can at least both agree on certain things that you have in common, if you wish to do that. But we understand that sometimes people will simply not wish to change their minds or change the track they're on, and it's not your job to change them. You can share what seems appropriate, but if they reject it, then move on. It's no use beating your head against a wall if they're being the wall. But if you can find some way to have some connection and some common agreement, it can be of some assistance. But we will leave that up to you on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, and this person is asking, Silicon Valley leaders are often seen as highly intelligent, forward-thinking, and passionate about innovation and improving the world through advanced technology. It seems like suddenly the tech billionaires have switched tracks, endorsing the other side, the side that wants to go backwards. I am perturbed. I can't imagine that it's money that is all that influences their decisions. What is going on here?
Some of it is the idea of money and power, but a lot of it is a childlike reaction to not being able to play the way they want. They're afraid of being hemmed in. They're afraid of being regulated. They're afraid of being told, that's not an appropriate thing to do. Many of these people have a kind of inner child-like negative reaction to the idea and the fear that they won't be able to play as fully as they want to play because they are being told that they have to take responsibility for the consequences of their choices. And as an immature being, they're not willing to do so. So a lot of it comes from that.
Okay. And when you asked the room in Sedona if we were willing to take responsibility for what you said about the election, what did you mean by responsibility?
Your ability to respond. We will discuss this more in the upcoming transmission next month of your time called Echoes of Sedona, where we will explain exactly why we said what we said, and yes, we said it, no one else. So we will explain our intention, we will explain many things that are connected to it in a way that ideally some of you may understand, some of you may not. Nevertheless, we will explain it in that transmission and not now.
Okay. And whatever reality we wake up in on November 6th, is that a reality where the tracks that have split no longer see each other? Or is there still a porousness where people in a reality where one person wins the US election can still end up in realities where someone else wins the US election?
It's not that you end up in the different reality, but there is still the porousness of being able to observe it and experience it to some degree, at least by observation. So it will not happen immediately that you will no longer see other tracks. This is a process that happens slowly over many years. Eventually it will happen in the 30-year reset from 2020 to 2050, but not right away, not immediately, not instantaneously. So there is still the ability to observe each other, even though you don't necessarily have to be affected by each other in the ways that you don't prefer to be.
So does that mean that regardless of who wins, when in the reality of a person observing it?
Let me put it to you this way. Remember that in each reality, each person will win. You're looking at different realities. And there are actually combinations of those realities that create third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh realities to differing degrees of what you experience. So it's not just the idea of, well, one won and the other one didn't. That can be one reality, but it can also be a reality where both wins in their own realities, and it can be a reality where one may win and the other may think they've won. That's another reality altogether. So there are different degrees in the splitting prism of the different realities that different people will experience. So just stay on the track that you prefer, stay in the vibration you prefer. Things will sort themselves out eventually so that the reality you really prefer will be the only one you will experience.
So regardless of whether your candidate wins or not, when you wake up the day that it is determined who has quote unquote won, then
that will be the reality that you will be dealing with because you have chosen to deal with it. So whatever reality you experience at that moment will, for that time, be the reality that you have chosen to be in for a variety of reasons that have to do with the life path that you chose and the challenges you chose to deal with.
Okay. And you've said multiple times that no major nuclear bombs would be allowed to go off on Earth while we're still open to contact. If 45 wins, does that mean that World War III will take place without nuclear warfare? Or does that mean those Earths will no longer be open to or eligible for contact?
Well, some of all of this. You have had World War II without the idea of nuclear confrontation on a global scale. You can certainly experience World War III without global nuclear war. Global nuclear war will be prevented by us because it damages more than just your own world. That's not allowed. It penetrates into other dimensions with the release of that much energy. So we have already demonstrated many times that global thermonuclear war will never be allowed by us. We will intervene in that because it affects more than just you and your world. Other than that, you can do what you wish with your own planet. However, again, the idea is that it is possible that certain versions of Earth will not experience contact, again, because of fear and negativity or just the preference to not experience it on a person's life path. So there are many versions of Earth that don't experience contact. There are many versions of Earth that will experience and do experience and are experiencing contact. Which version are you on? That's the only question.
Okay, and with so much negativity unfolding in the world, from conflicts and climate issues to political and health crises, and our limited ability to influence leadership and talk sense into them, how can we ensure we aren't dragged into a negative reality as realities diverge?
Again, you cannot be dragged by anyone into a reality. You have to make a choice to drag yourself into that reality. Take responsibility for your choices. Understand you are creating your reality. You cannot be dragged by anyone else. Stop giving up your power. So the idea is you can all be leaders in your own ways. Even if you're not literally in a position of political authority, you can still be a leader in your own way by being a living example of the reality you prefer through the actions you take and the interactions you make. So do so. Be your own leader. You're not dragged anywhere except by yourself.
Okay, and this may be redundant, but let's see.
Say that again, please.
I said I don't know if this is redundant.
Say
or
that
not.
again, please.
You're making me be redundant.
Yes.
All right, so this person says, I've been feeling excited about this upcoming US election some of the time, but also at times I feel a lot of pressure and stress around it. Like every choice I make is going to determine what reality I end up in, and afraid that I'm lining up with the wrong one when I make a mistake or see things in the news that's just out of fear, and my mind is taking over about it. We're still on track for outcomes that you had predicted, even if things seem close and tense in the news? Or are we really ending up switching tracks if we don't do everything just right for the next few weeks?
I would suggest to this person a word that you often use in your language. You just need to chill out. You are overworried, overcomplicating, overthinking the whole idea. Just do your best. Remember, as we said, the first step toward enlightenment is to lighten up on yourself. Don't take things so seriously. Just do your best to make the choices that you believe are representative of what you prefer. Let everything fall into place automatically according to that vibration. If you overthink it, overcomplicate it, overwork yourself, you'll overwhelm yourself. And that's when you can find yourself in dire circumstances. So stop second guessing yourself. Just do your best. Just chill out. Go with the flow.
Okay, and this is the last question we have time for. You mentioned that the conflict in the Middle East will escalate before it gets better, and that it will take a few years until there will be an event that is a breaking point. Might that event be the 2026 or 2027 contact event that you have predicted?
It's part of it, but things will not, shall we say, level out right away. It will take some time. Things have been going on in that area and other areas of your planet for quite some time. Even though it will start to change things, it will take some time, and there will be a process for people to get used to other things that can happen, other probabilities that can be better for everyone. So it will still take some time. Again, it's all part of what has been termed the reset of humanity in their evolutionary path between your years of 2020 and 2050, but things will smooth out over time. It will not happen overnight, but it will happen for those on that track. All right?
Yes, and is there anything else you'd like to share before we...
Not at this time, except once again to say, of course, you have our unconditional love, and we are all here helping you, guiding you. You have your own teams of spirits and soul families and angelic guardian guides, all helping you. Know that to be true. Allow yourself to feel that to be true. Move forward in your life with that as a truth, and things will smooth out for you. So, allow yourselves to simply become relaxed, go with the flow, everything will work out. You can allow yourself to know that no matter what happens, again, it's what you do with what happens that makes the difference. So we will remind you of that before we go on.
Thank you.
So prepare yourselves for relaxation and move forward.